How's it going, everybody? In this video I'm going to be talking about 10 super cheap cards that are under $1 that you could easily pick up from Double Masters. The first card is going to be Pithing Needle. This card's sitting at about 60 cents right now. This card can be ran in any deck. For 1 mana, as this enters the battlefield you choose a card name, and any activated abilities at the source of the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. This is great for targeting specific cards that you really dislike, let's say a Liliana the Veil or some sort of planeswalker. As long as this card remains on the field, the activated abilities of that card that you chose cannot be activated. Pithing Needle can be easily incorporated into any sideboard. Next up is Restoration Angel. This is one of my favorite cards back from Innistrad. When it was in Standard, it was really fun. For 4 mana, you get a 3/4 flying angel that has flash, and when it enters the battlefield, you basically blink a non-angel creature. This is great if you have enter the battlefield effects. Restoration Angel can also protect your creatures. If your opponent targets them with a spell, you can flash Restoration Angel in, target that creature, and essentially give it protection. Next up is Hostage Taker. This was a really good card back in Standard. For 4 mana, you get a 2/3 human pirate. When it enters the battlefield, you exile another target creature or artifact until this leaves the battlefield. You can cast that card as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as over any mana type to cast that spell. For a 4 mana card that allows you to take one of your opponent's artifacts or creatures and then recast it is actually pretty insane value. Next up is Grim Flair. For 2 mana, it's a 2/2 with trample. However, every time it does combat damage to a player, you look at the top 3 cards of your library. You can put any number of those in the graveyard and the rest on top of your library in any order. As long as you have 4 more card types in your graveyard, this gets +2/+2. So essentially this is a 2 mana 4/4 with trample that allows you to filter through the top of your deck to get the card you actually want to draw. Golgari also has a lot of synergy that helps work with the graveyard, and this card can really help facilitate that while getting you a huge body on the board. Next up is Jeskai Ascendants. The mana cost on this is very specific, however the effect is quite good if you're able to run these colors. It's an enchantment that has whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you can control get +1/+1 to the end of turn and untap those creatures. Also, if you cast a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Next up we have the Reveler. This is an 8 mana 3/4, which doesn't seem that good, however you're never casting it for that amount of mana. This costs 1 less to cast for each instant or sorcery in your graveyard, and it also has prowess, so every time you do cast a non-creature spell it gets +1 until the end of the turn. Also, when it does enter the battlefield, you discard your hand and draw 3 cards. With the type of deck that usually runs this card, you're typically going to be playing a lot of instant or sorceries that are going to be filling up your graveyard anyway, and when you do finally cast this card, you most likely will have no cards in your hand anyway. So what this card essentially is it's a 2 mana 3/4 that allows you to draw 3 cards, and every time you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1/+1 to the end of turn. Really good card for your instant and sorcery focused decks. Next up we have Flair, the Unbowed. I love this card because it punishes non-creature focused decks. This is a 6 mana 6/6 with Vigilance Reach, and it has to attack each combat if able. However, the best part of this card is whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, it deals 6 damage to that player. This card is incredibly good for EDH or Commander, and this could also be used as your commander since it's a legendary creature. Once this is on the field, every time your opponent casts again a non-creature spell, it deals 6 damage to them. I think this card is a lot of fun. Next up we have the Leonin Arbiter. For 2 mana it's a 2/2, and players cannot search libraries. Any player may pay 2 generic for that player to ignore this effect till the end of turn. This is a nice card to make your opponent pay an additional mana to search their deck. This might not seem like it comes up that much, but think about all the fetch lands that people run. And for under $1, it does slow down your opponent it doesn't prevent them from searching their library, however it definitely makes them pay for it. Next up we have Judith. Judith is a 3 mana 2/2, and other creatures you control get +1. Then whenever a non-token creature you control dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. I do run this in my Rakdos commander. This card works very well in a heavy creature based deck that allows for additional sacrificing. This card can also work if you do have some sort of infinite sacrifice outlet. Just a nice card that really supports creature focused decks, especially ones that allow you to sacrifice things. Next up we have Sarakshamundor. I think that is how you pronounce it. This has Grixis colors and 4 generics, so kind of a heavy mana cost. It has haste, and whenever it attacks, the defending player sacrifices a creature. Then whenever a player sacrifices a creature, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Sarakshamundor. However, the key thing here is whenever a player sacrifices a creature, you get to put a counter on it. This is great because if you build some sort of sacrifice deck, like including Judith, the card previously, you can get this card to be super big. Another key thing here is it's a creature. It could be a token as well. So just a fun card that has almost infinite potential if you keep sacrificing creatures and make your opponent sacrifice as well. The last card is going to be the most expensive one on the list, and it's Chaos Warp. This is a 3-mana instant speed card that can remove any permanent from the field. So you target a permanent and shuffle into that owner's library, then they reveal the top card of the library, and if it's a permanent, they put it onto the battlefield. This does have potential to backfire, however at the same time you do have the ability to target any permanent, yours or your opponent's, so it has a lot of versatility. And if you are running a spicy deck with big creatures, you have a possibility of actually summoning something really cool. The main thing that I'd be targeting here is one of my own permanents to protect it, and potentially getting a free permanent onto the battlefield, or trying to get rid of some problematic thing that my opponent has, maybe some sort of planeswalker or some big creature. Anyway though, that is 11 cards you can buy right now for under $1 from Double Masters. There's definitely a lot of other good cards in this set that are pretty cheap. I highly recommend checking it out. But anyway, thanks for watching, stick around for some more videos, and I'll see you later.